on the first episode of a special 4-part Voices from Beyond series.
Oh, God! We're back. We're home.
Were we who I think we were?
Oh, God, I think we were. I feel so dirty.
Did you bring Annabelle back with you?
Oh, my God. Does that mean there's 2 Annabelles in the current timeline?
We can't do time travel.
We'll worry about the implications of Annabelle later.
Why didn't Connor go back in time with us?
Oh, Connor, you're here. Where did you go?
I don't want to talk about it.
Something's wrong.
Oh no, I think Dana picked up a 5th dimensional parasite while we traveled through space-time.
I've come to fulfill the prophecy.
The prophecy?
No more prophecies, please.
We will record a 4-part series about Voices from Beyond.
Whatever you say, Mr. Entity, sir.
It has been written, so open.
Well, where do you want us to start?
Begin.
From deep inside the mysterious archives of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal, it's the Haunted Objects Podcast.
Voices from Beyond.
Hey.
Dana, are you okay?
Yeah.
You were just channeling some kind of a thing that called itself the Entity, and it delivered a prophecy.
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
What did it talk about?
It said we were going to do 4 episodes about instrumental mediumship.
Well, that's good, though. Last time I just talked about Bitcoin.
Yeah, we should have listened to you.
We should have.
I guess we're going to actually do this episode.
All right,
then.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, unlike the time where you predicted we should all invest in Bitcoin, we're actually going to listen to the Entity this time.
Yes.
And we're going to do an entire series, 4 episodes, all about instrumental mediumship. We're going to start with some of the earliest stuff, all the way up to some of the newest stuff. We'll give you guys a great overview of where this stuff came from, why certain mediums and ghost hunters and even people involved in like ufological studies, why these people are using the devices they are, why we have used these devices, how maybe you can use them differently, and give you a glimpse of probably where this stuff is going. The only way we'll really figure out where this stuff is going is if we talk about where it has come from. And the place that we have to start is way back in the Victorian spiritualist movement with something that was referred to as a spirit trumpet.
In the late 19th century, otherworldly voices were beginning to manifest in seance rooms across the world. But in one lonely cabin in the middle of Ohio, the whispered words of the dead emerged from a new device. The Spirit Trumpet. Those huddled in the cabin watched in awe as the hollow tube floated into the air on its own accord, hovering weightlessly as strange tongues echo through its metallic mouth. Believers insisted that the trumpet was a bridge to the other side, amplifying the words of husbands, wives, children, loved ones thought gone forever. Skeptics, however, called the device a simple parlor trick. Today, spirit trumpets have been replaced by electronic recorders. But for those who return to the origins of device-assisted mediumship, a deeply unsettling revelation hides in the dark corners of that long-forgotten cabin. These strange voices from beyond did not belong to the dead, but to something else entirely.
I don't think that there's a better way to start this series than to ask you a very simple question. Do you believe that it is possible that you can receive a message from the dead?
My answer would be yes. And my answer would also be that I would request that everyone who does believe that do a lot more research specifically into the occult, about what that actually means.
Sure.
Because you deserve to have more nuance around what that question is. And I don't believe that there is a lot of nuance around it. I believe that what we see now is pretty reductive.
This is part of the reason we wanted to do this series.
Yes.
Because there are so many questions. You and I have spent basically our entire lives as part of what most people would term the ghost hunting community. I don't think ghosts are dead people anymore. But that said, I do think that there are ways that we can potentially have communication with something that maybe has a shade of someone's personality.
Sure.
Hopefully by the time that we're at the end of this 4-part series, after looking at some of the tools that people have used, the techniques that they've used, we'll maybe have a different consensus about this. And hopefully that the listeners and the viewers will have their own new ideas about how maybe this has worked historically and could be working now, just maybe not in the ways that we're told it works.
Yeah, I'm hoping that at the very least, along the next 4 episodes, if this is something that you're interested in, you will find new roads.
Yes.
You will find new roads that will lead you deeper into the information so that it can mean more to you in that way.
Now, this thing might look really simple, and it is. It's just a kind of an expanding piece of tin. It's like almost like a cheerleader's trumpet that you would see at a high school football game.
It's like a pipe from an HVAC unit.
It kind of does look like that. In fact, I have seen some people who have tried to pass off those as like old school spiritualist mediumship devices.
Yes.
These are much rarer. These are very specific things. There are still some people who create these today. You can still find them today, numerous kinds. Before we get into exactly where these things came from, how they were used, before we do a little demonstration, we should talk about where this even came from. We have this in the museum's collection because it came from Camp Chesterfield. Camp Chesterfield is a spiritualist community that's just a couple hours away over in Indiana.
Yeah.
The Camp Chesterfield website calls themselves the Spiritual Center of Light and your gateway to spiritualism, at least here in the Midwest. It's a lovely little community. A lot of the mediums live on site there.
So these are all folks that believe in spiritualism. How would you define spiritualism?
Spiritualism is sort of a religion where one of the central tenets is actually mediumship.
Yes.
It's not always the dead. Sometimes it's other things too, entities that maybe were never human to begin with.
Yeah.
But part of these religious ceremonies involve actually channeling the dead.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to go to church and watch people literally channeling spirits. It's kind of a very common thing, actually.
When I went to go pick this up, I was like, well, I've got to go and take a walk through Camp Chesterfield. So I started walking around the area, and this guy comes out from one of the houses there because he sees me, and they must not get terribly many visitors in the off season. And he walks up, he asks me how I'm doing, and he introduces himself. He was one of the spiritualist ministers that was there. And I told him I was out here to pick up one of these antique spirit trumpets for our museum collection. He told me I should go and check out their museum. And then he started telling me a little bit about the camp, and he was a little more honest than I expected him to be.
Yeah.
He said, I remember it very clearly, he said, I was telling him, how much I admired some of the spiritualist tenets, and he was like, well, this camp was one of the bad ones at one time. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, this is one of the camps where there was a lot of fraudulent mediumship happening. And it's true.
Yes.
There's a journalist who exposed it. We have a quote here. This is actually from the Indiana tourism website. They list this.
I can't believe this.
DiscoverIndiana.com. Yeah.
You can go and see this yourself. This is how they're promoting one of their tourist destinations in Indiana. On August 23rd, 1925, Camp Chesterfield made national headlines when Virginia Swain, a reporter for the Newspaper Enterprise Association, was assaulted during its 35th annual convention. Miss Swain had been investigating the camp and found evidence of a scam in which mediums were conducting bogus seances for a price, and thereby, they actually use a slur.
They do use a slur here.
On the Indiana tourism website.
Gulp.
I'm not going to read it. You can see it on screen. Basically screwing people out of their money. That afternoon, she arrived with officers from the Anderson Police Department with an arrest warrant. The cult followers responded by attempting to lynch Miss Swain, who narrowly escaped injury. A total of 14 mediums were charged with fraud and taken into custody, and Miss Swain's 6-part expose of the paranormal was published in newspapers nationally. 9 months later, charges were dropped due to entrapment on the part of Miss Swain.
That's crazy.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yes.
Tough to see how it's not entrapment, but also how often is fraudulent mediumship happening today? And these people aren't being arrested for it.
You hear about this type of stuff happening all the time now. You know, there's big mediums who are caught using earpieces, who are caught using secret radios or hand signals or whatever so they can, you know, perform fake mediumship in large groups of people who paid a lot of money to go to these things.
Yeah.
Faith healers, all that kind of stuff still happens. But I think they get away with it today because they call it entertainment.
Yes, yeah.
There's like an entertainment clause for it.
They didn't have the fine print back then.
No, they didn't. They were still working out the scheme back then.
Yeah, the commercials that with the very fast talking fine print weren't in existence.
No. And you would think that after one of these big scandals, Camp Chesterfield might have chilled out, but that's not true. There were actually 2 other very notable times that they were caught again. Back in 1977, a very infamous book called The Psychic Mafia was released. This book was written by the author, M. Lamar Keene, who was formerly a medium at Camp Chesterfield, and wrote this entire book as an expose about how they did it. And basically, the reason it had the title it has is they basically compared it to organized crime.
Yeah, because it was like a huge group of people kind of working together to pull this scam off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was another big one that was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Right between the one that happened in the 20s where they almost killed that reporter and the 70s where this book came out and revealed all of these tricks, there was another big one that happened with somebody we have talked about before on this show.
Quite a bit, actually.
We didn't even know this. Wasn't it Keelan that discovered this while Keelan was doing research?
Yeah, it was right there in the Camp Chesterfield wiki as a little byline, so we dove into it.
Camp Chesterfield is like the bad boy of spiritualist camps.
It kind of is.
Not that they aren't all.
They're probably all the bad boy.
But for real though, there was some stuff going down.
There really was.
Yeah.
Well, a pretty famous name in parapsychological circles, Andrea Paharich, actually went to the camp because one of his friends was trying to figure out if people were ripping people off at this place.
Yeah.
And so he brought some of his night vision cameras, probably supplied by the CIA.
Probably.
I love knowing him.
The setting too is like, imagine this is in 1960. So like, you know, it's 1960 Andrea Paharich that's doing this, which is I love the idea of this.
And he actually caught mediums sneaking around the room when they were supposed to be in the mediumship cabinet and pulling, you know, typical mediumship tricks on people where they were like, you know, pulling on their hair and touching them and using handkerchiefs to make it look like there was ectoplasm coming out of mediums' mouths and things like that. There's actually some photographs of that bust, of that sting that Paharich was part of.
They're incredible. We've
got some of them on the screen right here. You can see them. That's Gladys Strom coming out of the mediumship cabinet.
Just creeping on out.
There's
doing a little sneak,
more,
sneaking around. Sneak and get you nowhere.
See, the way that this is supposed to work is, in order to prove the medium's abilities, they would go into these little cabinets where they were covered with curtains. And oftentimes they would even be like tied down to a chair or something.
Yes.
So that you knew that the medium wasn't pulling tricks on you. But as you find out more and more that you explore this stuff, anytime the lights are out.
Yeah.
and they're saying like, there are no stooges in the audience.
Yeah. There's some shady things going on in the dark.
Usually
basically.
some shady stuff going on.
People are creeping around.
So Camp Chesterfield was pretty infamous for this type of stuff. And yet they still persist today. You can still go there today. When I talked to that minister who was one of the spiritualist ministers, he was like, no, we don't do any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Things are not nearly as sensational. You know, he was like, well, you have to understand, we actually do believe in communication with the dead. That's part of what our religious beliefs are. And it's unfortunate that people take advantage of that.
Well, I like the idea that he was also, you know, it was like the first thing that he talked to you about, that he was very open with it and transparent about it. Like, yeah, we kind of have this bit of you know, crappy history where this was happening here. Not that it wasn't happening in other places as well. But I love the fact that that transparency was sort of offered up right away. Like, yeah, we know, we were doing some stuff back in the day. It happened.
We're going to get more into Camp Chesterfield, and we'll talk a little bit more about, in particular, fraudulent mediumship in a little bit. But first, maybe we should talk about spiritualism as a whole.
Yeah, that's great.
Back in 1848, at a little cabin in New York, the Fox sisters began to hear some knocks.
Yes.
And these knocks allegedly came from something that they referred to as Mr. Splitfoot, which is interesting because that sounds like a cloven hoof to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like the devil.
Yeah.
And pretty soon they started to attribute a lot of this to the dead speaking. And so because of that, they would sit around a table. People would come from all over the place. They became a big curiosity. People came to them in order to speak to the dead. They went on tour. Eventually, one of them was convinced to come out and say, we were actually just doing this because we can crack our ankles.
Yeah.
A lot of that's still happening today. You can actually attend things like this where people are literally just cracking their ankles and telling you that the dead are talking through them.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was that was happening at this time, it sparked a fire in people, and people started to become very interested in the idea that the dead could return and give messages to people. It started a brand new religion. This spread all over the country. All kinds of different devices were created in order to do this. It's where we get the Ouija board from. Before we even had the Ouija board, there was automatic writing. It was just the planchette and not the board. And you would sit there and the dead would speak to you through the movements of your hands, automatic writing.
A lot of the knocks and raps as well started with the alphabet as a focus, right?
Yes.
So it would be like there was just people just constantly reading through the alphabet, and then the knock from Mr. Splitfoot would happen. Or the crack from their ankles would happen, or the knock on the wood on the door or something in the house. So they used the alphabet as a precursor for like 60 years before the Ouija board was even invented.
There's a lot of different ideas on why people were so obsessed with this at the time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is the most fascinating is the idea that right around the same time was when things like the telegraph were being invented, and people were using telegraphs to send messages over long distances invisibly.
Yeah.
And that sort of did something to people's imaginations.
Yeah, I think we also have to remember that at the time, too, people were kind of dropping like flies. So it wasn't uncommon for people to have a lot of death sort of in their regular life.
Well, think about the time period. It was the Civil War when spiritualism really started to boom.
Yeah, so you've got a bunch of people that are in a constant state of grief hoping to communicate with their loved ones. So death was something that was around them all the time. It would make sense that their minds would start going and kind of combining those two things together.
And things like the telegraph, they felt like magic.
Yes.
Being able to send a message from one place to another, if you could do that over vast pieces of land, why couldn't you do that between the veil of the living and the dead?
Exactly.
And that was sort of how a lot of these people saw what was happening at that time. They claimed, a lot of the dead that they were talking to claimed to have scientists and researchers on their side of the veil that were also working on devices that would allow these people to speak to each other.
Exactly.
I think a lot of the mystery around what was being built at the time made people curious about these types of things. And because people didn't really understand how it works, they were able to kind of invent ideas in their mind about how it could work.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot of the same thing these days with one of the words that I hate to even hear involved in the paranormal is like quantum physics.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a bunch of people who have a very specialized thing. Normal people don't understand it. And so immediately it's attributed to the paranormal.
Yes.
That's the explanation for the paranormal.
Yeah.
Quantum physics.
Exactly.
There's even people who are doing really weird stuff with AI right now, where they believe that AI can perform mediumship for you, just because they don't really understand how this technology is working. I think we see the same kind of thing like that with Victorian spiritualism as well.
Sure. And much like today, there wasn't a lot of rules in terms of what people were doing. So you have 3 young girls who are doing this. Well, I can do this too. And so it invites kind of everybody to sort of toss their hat in the ring and see if they can do something like that. And you start to get many different versions of it and people with different, types of morals and ethics trying to do it as well.
Absolutely. And of course, when you see that start to happen, there are people who are going to capitalize on it.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we've seen this type of thing in modern day, like ghost hunting circles, where people are capitalizing on building all kinds of crazy devices that you use to try and speak to the dead. We were using Xbox Kinects.
Yes.
Children's toys.
Yes.
Cat toys to try and talk to the dead. Back then, they were building all kinds of devices. They were using table tipping, even tables that were made specifically for the purpose, planchettes. They made Ouija boards. There was all kinds of stuff. But there were some people who took it even further, and they didn't need a device or a tool at all. They were straight up being possessed by dead people and then letting them speak through them. And this wasn't something that was just happening in people's basements once in a while. These things were happening, they were gatherings where people would come from all over. Sometimes extremely famous people would come and be part of these seances. Notable figures like P.T. Barnum was one of them. I'm sure that he was wondering what the heck was going on. How can I capitalize on this? Queen Victoria was another one.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most famous people who got really interested in spiritualism was allegedly Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln attended a seance, and it was a little girl who was acting as the medium. And there's a record of what happened there. And this record shows that this might have had a really big impact on a lot of his policies. We're going to read you a passage about that. But before we do, we want to take these silly clothes off because I've been wearing these things. Time doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
When you're traveling through a wormhole.
Hundreds and hundreds of years we've been wearing these outfits now.
It's true. So they kind of stink.
They do.
I'm going to take this stuff off while we do a dramatic reading of this medium's experience.
Mr. and Mrs. Laurie and Mrs. Miller were duly presented. Then I was led forward and presented. He stood before me, tall and kindly, with a smile on his face. Dropping his hand upon my head, he said in a humorous tone, "So this is our little Nettie, is it, that we have heard so much about?" I could only smile and say, "Yes, sir," like any schoolgirl, when he kindly led me to an ottoman. Sitting down in a chair, the ottoman at his feet, he began asking me questions in a kindly way about my mediumship, and I think he must have thought me stupid, as my answers were a little beyond a yes and no. His manner, however, was genial and kind, and it was then suggested we form a circle. He said, "Well, how do you do it?" looking at me. Mr. Laurie came to the rescue and said we have been accustomed to sit in a circle and join hands, but he did not think it would be necessary in this instance. While he was yet speaking, I lost all consciousness of my surroundings and passed under control. For more than an hour, I was made to talk to him, and I learned from my friends afterward that it was upon matters that he seemed fully to understand, while they comprehended very little until that portion was reached that related to the forthcoming Emancipation Proclamation. He was charged with the utmost solemnity and force of manner not to abate the terms of its issue, and not to delay its enforcement as a law beyond the opening of the year, as he was assured that it was to be the crowning event of his administration and his life, and that while he was being counseled by strong parties to defer the enforcement of it, hoping to supplant it by other measures and to delay action, he must in no wise heed such counsel, but stand firm to his convictions and fearlessly perform the work and fulfill the mission for which he had been raised up by an overruling providence.
So that was from the medium themselves.
Yeah.
It was from Nettie Colburn Maynard was her name. It was from the book, Was Abraham Lincoln a Spiritualist? Or Curious Revelations from the Life of a Trance Medium. You have to keep in mind, these were literally people who were claiming to have the dead speaking directly through them.
Yeah.
It is something that's been happening in many different religious movements all over the world, basically since the dawn of humanity. People have been channeling things. It's been coming through their mouths. But why is it? And I see this even today. It seems like a lot of the idea of the dead speaking to us is easier to swallow when there's some kind of a device involved between the potential medium and us.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it allows people to believe that it's not just that person channeling something or potentially making something up. There's something very comforting about an object or a thing being the stopgap between you and the person doing it.
And just having to believe that this person is doing what they're claiming to do.
Yeah, because I think even the idea of channeling, like it's a weird thing to think about people channeling so much at this point in time because it's not something that's very common today in at least those types of circles.
Right.
It's not something that I think it would be something that would actually weird people out if they saw it like in person. If the average person interested in the subject matter were to watch a person channeling, I think they'd be really weirded out by it probably.
Well, guess what? We get to watch some of that in this episode. We pulled some of our favorite ones.
Yeah.
We'll show you some of our favorite channelers in just a little bit.
Yeah.
The devices, when you think of a device that's put between you and some kind of mediumship, what do you think of?
I mean, there's a ton of them. That some of them you can think of like Ouija boards.
I think that's the classic, right?
It's the iconic one for sure.
It's one that everybody is terrified of. Anytime you talk to like modern ghost hunters, they want to tell you don't use it. You're opening a portal. That's sort of the implication there is that by using that device, you're opening yourself up to potential possession, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I would even argue that things like EVP recorders and things like that, those are still devices that put something between you and the ghost.
Yeah.
We're uncomfortable almost with the idea of a person claiming to have that kind of ability.
Yeah, it almost allows the object itself allows us to sort of believe them a bit more because maybe it's coming from the object and it's not directly coming from that person.
Absolutely. This simple piece of tin. You wouldn't think much about it. You kind of made a joke earlier that it looks like a piece of HVAC.
It does. It looks like it should be in the walls of your house now.
It does. And it's probably made of the same exact material.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is really cool about the Spirit Trumpet is that they were developed right here in Ohio, just a few hours from here.
When the paranormal lurks in every shadow, and each mysterious artifact hides a ghostly tale, one show dares to uncover the truth. The Haunted Objects Podcast. Now you can wear the mystery. Introducing the official Haunted Objects merchandise. Hats, shirts, pins, and more. All designed by independent artists, manufactured by small businesses, and carrying the undeniable essence of the unexplained. Embrace the legend. Wear the mystery. Visit planetweird.store today.
Okay, so to set the stage, imagine you're a bereaved person in the Civil War era. You show up to a medium. You're there for a seance. You sit down. On the table in front of you typically would be items like a pencil and paper, maybe a musical instrument, and then very, very frequently a big spirit trumpet like that. A big, long, sometimes they're like 3-4 feet long, these spirit trumpets. And obviously most people would have no context for what in the world these things were or how they worked. And honestly, it seems like each medium used it a little bit of a different way. The most frequent use of the spirit trumpet isn't probably the way that you're thinking of right away. Most people, like when I see it, I think of people holding it up to their mouth and a voice, coming out.
Right.
Like you're announcing the king coming or something.
Yes.
That's not actually the most frequent way to do it. Most people, the spirit would talk to the person from the wide end and their ear would have the narrow end.
Almost like they were giving a message specifically for one person to hear.
Right. So it's almost like those supersonic ears that ghost hunters still use today, right?
Yes, exactly.
So if you're wandering around somewhere and you're like, oh, I need to hear these voices, these invisible voices that are all around, the best way to do it is to focus in on it and to lean it up to your ear, right? And so that was a frequent way that the spirits would talk through the spirit trumpet, not as an announcer, but almost like it was like a distiller. The other way, of course, is the voices could just straight up come out of the wide end of the trumpet.
Yeah.
Sometimes the spirit trumpet would be laying on the floor and the voices would just appear out of it. Sometimes it would start to float around the room because remember, almost all of these seances happened in the dark. And if it's completely dark, how in the world are you going to see a spirit trumpet? Well, they thought of that too, didn't they?
We have a very rare example of a old spirit trumpet that still has the luminous bands on it. If you look at this one that I've got in my hands right here, this is a very old trumpet. You can see there's these green bands around the end of it, around the middle of it, and around the very tip. These bands glowed in the dark so that you could watch the trumpet move around in the dark during the seance on its own. Can you imagine what that must have been like?
I mean, it was probably pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure.
I can imagine that people were probably it was probably an intense experience. They were hoping, or that maybe they were a little scared that the trumpet would come close to them. I love the idea also that it is the small end that comes to your ear because it also allows for a little bit of privacy.
Yeah.
With the experience. So it's not
Must have felt very intimate.
Yeah, it's not blasting all that information out across the table. It's something very quietly being whispered into your ear, which is very interesting, and it's an interesting angle, I think.
People thought that there was invisible voices
in
the air around them.
Connor, you found one a cool way that this was used that I'd never even thought about before.
There was one instance, a medium who just went totally off the wall and used the spirit trumpet as a way for objects to apport into the room.
God, that's so crazy. That must have been so scary.
That's what I mean. They're in the dark. They're crying. Things are flying out of nowhere, hitting them and landing in their laps and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Her name was Estelle Roberts. She was in the UK. Most notably, she talked through or to her spirit guide, a Native American man named Red Cloud.
Yes.
We should really quickly touch on this. There was a very strange phenomenon that was happening during Victorian spiritualism, particularly in the United States, where, we talked about some of these spiritualist camps. They all sort of had like a patron spirit attached to them, and they were almost always Native American.
Yes.
I think, we can speculate on it all day long, but there were people who had all kinds of different races and cultures of people that they were channeling. And these were usually white people that were doing this.
Yes. If not always.
If not always. And I think it was because to them, people from these other places were exotic.
Sure.
And early American settlers here, they probably still maintained some kind of weird exoticism about Native Americans. And so you notice if you start to look at a lot of these spirit these spirit photos from the time period.
Oh, yeah.
If you go and look at the old images of these spiritualist camps, you'll notice they're almost always associated with some kind of Native American imagery. Mm-hmm. We even have some spirit art from mediums who will actually draw your spirit guides.
Yes.
They're never white.
No, never.
and these guys were like operating in the 80s. Stan Matronick is one of those guys. We have a ton of his work. They're almost always like Native American, Indian, African.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you would see somebody who had a white spirit guide.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
Red Cloud not only was not white, he also had a tendency to throw objects out of a spirit trumpet at people, apparently. We saw this through the Austin Seance. Which is a cool publication who I believe watches the show.
I think there are museum members who are part of the Austin Seance.
That's so
they
cool.
even did a
That's
write-up
very
in the
cool.
newsletter about the Estes method not too long ago, which
Love
is really
that.
cool.
They talked about how many of the gifts were much too large to pass through the narrow neck of the trumpet. It seemed, as was clearly demonstrated at the end of the seance, yet pass through they did without any outside help. Here is a quote from a book by the medium, Estelle Roberts. We saw by the two luminous spots painted on the trumpet that the trumpet was moving. It tip-tapped on the ground, and soon we heard a rattling sound inside of it. This is for John. Hold out your hand, Rachel, said Red Cloud, addressing Constance. Rachel is the name that he had given to her. When she did so, an apport fell into it. She passed it to me. I could feel that it was a jewel of some kind. This process was repeated again and again until everyone in the seance room had received a gift from Red Cloud. It was always the same procedure. The trumpet would tap on the floor, there was the rattling sound, and then a port shot into Rachel's hand. Where do they come from? I asked Red Cloud. Laughingly, he replied, the land of anywhere.
I love the land of anywhere.
Yeah.
It's so evocative. That's a creepy thing to say. Like you're talking to Willy Wonka or something.
A small jewel, looks like a beetle kind of statue thing that looked like it was Egyptian.
If you want to hear more about apports, go and listen to our episode about apports. We talk all about them, where they came from, some of the most famous ones, but I don't think we ever covered any of them coming out of a spirit trumpet.
No.
That's pretty cool. Well, we should probably put our skeptic hats on.
Yes.
Which are available in the Planet Weird store
They
if
are.
you'd like one of your own. And talk about how they probably were doing this.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of reasonable ways to look at this. It almost seems silly now because
does,
it's so
yeah.
simple. Connor, as somebody, I don't want to make you reveal any secrets that you're not supposed to reveal. We've already had enough trouble with that.
I've been through a lot.
Brother Connor has spent too much time divulging in the secrets of the great and mysterious Brotherhood of Magicians.
I've been through a lot for this podcast.
How would they make things come out of the trumpet?
Well, the most common, of course, would just be a preloaded trumpet, right? So you could have a little gateway system up on top of there, you know, like an old cup and balls routine if you wanted to.
Sure.
Or oftentimes there's like another compartment in the bottom, you know, that allows that to happen. So it could be like, you know, a Russian doll nesting kind of situation.
Oh, yeah.
Or frankly, more likely, if the lights are off, anything's fair game. I mean, like, you don't know that it's coming out of the trumpet.
That's true.
And so I would bet that most frequently the trumpet was just in the vicinity and then it was just dropped into somebody's hand. Probably.
Yeah. Likely whoever was using the trumpet had a pocket full of jewels.
A pocket full of jewels.
They were sprinkling around the room.
Exotic
like,
coins and religious iconography.
Yeah.
A basketball.
Still very likely what was going on, if not exactly what was going on.
I mean, that is what magicians are known for. They just carry around like a bunch of like little foam balls and like rubber thumbs
They
and
always
stuff
have
in their
weird
pockets.
stuff in their pockets.
We've all been through, right?
Yeah, sure. All of us.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my guess. I mean, and if it's not even somebody, it could be pulleys and string, of course, too, lifting that thing up and down.
What a lot of these mediums would do is they would place the trumpet either on the floor or it would be on the table. And then they would say, listen, so you guys know that this is on the up and up. I'm going to go sit in that cabinet over there and I'm going to close the door. And that way you know that it's not just me playing a trick on you.
I love that there's so much like front loading the experience with like I'm not messing around on you guys here. Like there's so much of that where it's like I built a whole cabin that I'm gonna go sit in just so that you know that there's no funny business going. It's literally like don't
It's a
look
magician.
over there. Yeah.
It's literally the pattern that a magician gives you. Anytime you go to a magic show and the magician says there are no stooges in the audience,
You just assume
you know that there's stooges
you're
in the audience.
Yeah, you're the only guy who bought a ticket. That's the best way to think about it. Everyone else is a stooge.
Absolutely.
The other catch is like if it's so easy to just put your hand inside of it and to lift it around onto somebody's ear or something like that. That had to have been the most common.
We even read that sometimes they were like hidden rubber hoses that would go into the medium cabinet and then in the dark could be attached to the end of the trumpet.
Yeah.
So that the voices could still come out of it even though it wasn't anywhere near the medium cabinet.
It probably sounded extra weird too when it was like traveling all the way through that pipe. Like it would have just been a very weird experience, something like really strange to hear, trying to figure out what it was saying.
You don't often know where voices are coming from in the dark.
Sure.
And so it's actually really hard to tell. If it sounds like it's coming through a trumpet, you're going to assume that it's the trumpet that you can see in the middle of the room.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
But it's just as easy for somebody to have another trumpet without glow-in-the-dark bands in the back of the room talking through it.
Absolutely.
That
And your
totally
mind
makes sense.
just makes the connection.
There was a book that came out in 1903 that revealed a lot of these tricks and how they were done. It was called Mysteries of the Seance and Tricks and Traps of Bogus Mediums, a plea for honest mediums and clean work by someone who went by a lifelong spiritualist who was, after their death, revealed to be a man named Edward Lund.
Yeah, it was like the masked magician of its day, basically. That like
totally
early 2000
was.
show, giving all the secrets away.
Well, the thing that was crazy is you could actually order spirit trumpets out of magicians' catalogs.
Yeah.
In fact, quite a few of the things that you would find at a spiritualist summoning circle were things that were ordered out of magicians' catalogs, whether it was like rapping hands or chattering skulls. There was a lot of rigged stuff that you could use basically to do a magic trick, but not so ethically. In fact, there were some magicians who took a lot of offense to the fact that their tricks were being used to take advantage of people. There's one who really doesn't need any introduction. I think his name was Houdini.
Houdini?
Houdini, am I pronouncing that right?
Houdini.
Let us know in the comments if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, it's Houdini, I believe.
He was a big,
believe it is that.
He was a hater. He was a
hater.
big hater.
Professional hater, Houdini.
Okay.
Of course, we're talking about Houdini.
Yeah.
Houdini, a very famous skeptic.
Very famous hater.
I mean, truly, there are a few haters who have gone to the lengths that Houdini did when it came to disproving fraudulent mediums. I mean, the man had an entire second career where he went around the country secretly sneaking into seances.
It's in the maybe one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my whole life. There were costumes involved and they were not good.
No, he had an entire persona that he would dress up as in order to infiltrate these things because he had a reputation. People knew who he was. He was one of the most famous men of the time period.
Yes.
And he hated mediums. He hated psychics.
I'm sure that mediums were like the idea of seeing him come into the seance room, or like even just like knowing that he was like maybe in the same town as them probably put the fear of God in them.
Absolutely. They would have never let him in if they had seen Houdini.
So luckily he donned this very believable costume and name and got away with it.
What was the name he used?
Oh my God.
What was it again?
Were people just dumber back then?
It was Francis.
Francis
Raud.
So F. Raud. He even... The best part about it is even like under these circumstances, he still couldn't stop himself from like taking a jab.
Oh my
and being
God,
like,
I know.
They're so dumb.
Look how stupid these people are.
They didn't even get the name.
Look at these photos. We have some photos on screen.
I have to point out my favorite thing about these photos is the fact that he is not standing normal at all. Like he does not. He looks like a guy who's in a costume trying to blend in as much as like humanly possible.
I know he's not wearing a rubber mask, but these photos make it look like he is because he's clearly wearing a wig and then a hat on top of the wig.
Yeah, he's doing like a weird facial expression too, like I'm just a sad man at a seance.
Keelan texted me this picture and said, "This is Houdini in disguise," and then she said, "This is theater kid on theater kid violence."
It is.
Like, oh,
Keelan is right. Keelan is right.
Keelan nailed it. Theater kid on theater kid violence.
He has a wig on.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
That's not Houdini, guys.
Houdini.
That's Mr. Raud.
Mr. Raud.
Yeah, Mr. F. Raud.
How do you do, fellow spiritualists?
Yeah. I'm just a normal guy.
We actually have an article on screen here that says Houdini exposes another fake seance. This happened on July 2nd. Harry Houdini, magician, donning a white wig and makeup, has put a crimp in another seance and caused the arrest of Mrs. Cecil M. Cook, the medium, and Antoinette Benson, the cashier, who collected admission from 34 persons.
Dude, there's another example of an arrest, though. Like, could you imagine today if they were arresting like mediums that are faking it? That's crazy.
Yeah. I think that happens occasionally, but they have to like perform some crazy amount of fraud to the point where they're like bilking people out of their inheritance money and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It happens, but it happens so very rarely. This feels like so quaint.
Yes.
Because people pay big money to go to these big gallery shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've been to numerous of them.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to these things. It's like $50. You don't even know if you're going to get called or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch these people perform this mediumship.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels flippant because these people are making sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Anyway, it says here, Antoinette, the cashier who collected admissions from 34 persons, the women are charged with obtaining money under false pretenses. The seance was conducted in a basement on West 88th Street. Houdini last night talked with a mythical son, Alfred.
So he had like a fake story that he told the medium.
I've seen this happen before. If you followed some of the big skeptic busts that they've done, they do the same thing where they'll like pretend that they have a family member who's gone. They'll post about it on Facebook. And then the medium who is there will actually communicate with the non-existent son. And the only reference to that son is on Facebook. So make sure your Facebook is private before you get a psychic reading.
That's very smart.
The medium, in a piping voice, Houdini said, called, "Hello, Dad. Hello, Alfred," Houdini replied. "How are you?" Then he crept closer to learn the source of the voice of the mythical Alfred. He turned a flashlight on Mrs. Cook, disclosing a metal trumpet in her hands. 2 policemen then entered and arrested the medium and her assistant.
He creeped on the creepers.
It's like Chris Hansen, but for psychics.
Yeah, he's a vigilante. He's like the Batman of. And Alfred, he was trying to talk to Alfred. He is the Batman.
I like him. He should get more attention.
Yeah. This guy's going places.
This guy was really going places.
You look at one of these spirit trumpets, and we have several here. I've got 3 of them that we've got on the table right now. Different manufacturers. Some of them are bigger. Some of them are smaller. Some of them have the bands on them. But all of them are really just pieces of tin. They're just these collapsible tin trumpets. So when I'm looking at these, I'm like, well, there's no real way to rig these things. But it turns out, apparently Houdini found that you could actually put some kind of like a radio transmitter inside of these things.
That's crazy.
And you didn't even have to be holding them or anywhere near them. You could transmit radio signals through them.
Wow.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah.
That is weird. Here's a diagram right here from Houdini's 1922 popular radio.
Weird. The familiar trumpet of the spiritualist medium.
What a wild thing. You know what's crazy? We could do that with like a spirit box or something, and then we could actually use a spirit trumpet to try and talk to ghosts.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's funny that like the fraudulent method of speaking to ghosts was actually turned into the quote unquote legitimate method to talk to ghosts, because now ghost hunters, I mean, it's standard practice to use a radio to try and speak to ghosts.
You can see, exactly. Like you can see the inspiration today for like the idea of utilizing some sort of tool to allow spirits to communicate. And the idea, I think, at this point was that they were so close to us, that that veil was so thin that their voices could be heard through something as simple as like a tube. But today, the belief is more, the idea that the radio can kind of tap into a different I don't know, a different like dimension or something.
Sure.
But you're still doing the same thing.
So now we've talked a little bit about what these trumpets were used for, how they were used, how fraudulent mediums were using them in order to give the illusion that stranger things were happening through them. But we have to remember, this all started with just people's voices. Originally, these were just designed to amplify the voice of the medium as they channeled entities. So we should talk a little bit more about some of the people and how they were channeling these things, and more specifically, who they were channeling.
Do you believe that an ordinary object can be cursed? You will. Join Greg and Dana Newkirk, 2 of the world's only full-time paranormal researchers and hosts of the Haunted Objects podcast, for a spine-tingling, interactive evening of true supernatural tales told by the very people who lived them.
And he starts to stand up, and I go, oh, that's it. I'm actually going to die. And I'm thinking, how long can I hold this guy off while Dana runs screaming into Gary, Indiana in the middle of the night?
Dare to lock eyes with the restless face. Uncover the dark secrets contained within the Catskills Chrome. Learn the fiery truth behind the cursed crying boy paintings. And more. But that's not all. In this show, you'll leave with a ghost story of your own by becoming part of the Newkirk's most daring experiment yet. The creation of the world's most haunted dolls. Your energy. Your intent.
Oh my gosh, her eyes look like it just moved.
Your fears. All woven into vessels that only you can awaken. Haunted Objects Live. You'll laugh, you'll scream, you'll sleep with the lights on. Visit newkirktour.com.
So let's take a little bit of time to talk about the people who were channeling these voices from beyond. They were just using their own voice boxes to do this. This is not anything new.
No.
People have been doing this. Different cultures around the world have been channeling voices from beyond, basically since the dawn of humanity. This is something that has existed across the world. Ancient Mesopotamia, China, Egypt, they all had vocal channeling. Indigenous peoples, often called shamans, priests, priestesses, they believed that if they were in the right state of mind, they could often actually speak for the gods. The gods would speak through them. Sometimes the dead, the ancestors, would speak through them. Most of the time, this had to happen while they were in some kind of ecstatic state.
Yes.
They could reach these states by taking, maybe mushrooms was one of them. Lick a toad, and you would start to go into a trance. Sometimes all it took was rhythmic drumming, music.
Yeah,
the
fasting.
right kind of music, fasting. There were all kinds of things that you could do in order to reach a different sort of psychological state. And when you were in that state, you would start to channel voices from another place.
All right. So one of the most common and probably most people recognize, would be the Oracle of Delphi in Greece.
Yeah.
And the idea again is you can imagine a woman, a high priestess, sitting on a very tall chair over top of a crack in the earth. There's smoke pouring out of it, likely sulfur, different types of smoke. And she's breathing it in and she's channeling Apollo, literally the god. Many, many different spiritual leaders, spiritual people have channeled using their own voices on behalf of their gods, their ancestors, their land spirits, whatever it is. But it's not an uncommon thing to find spiritual leaders doing these types of activities.
I think the interesting thing about this is the idea that there's always some kind of a shift in consciousness that's happening.
Sure.
When this is going on.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that they would be over a crack in the earth.
Yeah.
There'd be noxious fumes coming out.
Pouring out of it.
It would put them in an altered state.
Yeah.
We talked earlier, the idea of rhythmic drumming can do that. There's even sort of hypnotic stuff that could happen to you that would put you in that kind of a state.
Yeah.
But you also said something else that was interesting. You said they would channel Apollo's voice. Well, fortunately, there are still people who are doing this today.
Yeah.
And they have recorded themselves doing this.
Oh, yes.
Let's see if this scares us.
Okay, this first guy we're going to watch, this is Jack Purcell.
We'd be very much interested in talking to Lazarus now. Would that be possible?
Sure. Yeah, it takes about 30 to 45 seconds, and outwardly it will look like I'm just sitting here with my eyes closed, and then he'll come through and,
Could you tell us who you are?
Well, that's a difficulty indeed. We're opening to figuring that out ourselves, aren't we? Just as you and your approach are looking for that particular question, that is perhaps the question of all time. Who are you and who are we indeed? We describe ourselves perhaps as a spark of consciousness, a spark of love. For we have no body, and we never have.
That I think is a Scottish accent, right?
Yeah. I don't know why, but that guy looks like he was like moments away from transforming into a werewolf for some reason.
Maybe he was.
He took his glasses off. Like, I got to take these off before I transform.
Gonna burst out of the
my
suit.
skin explodes.
Maybe Lazarus is a werewolf. Which, by the way,
maybe
if you're only listening to the audio podcast, you missed the on-screen titles because each person gets their own titles.
Yeah.
Lazarus is just Lazarus.
Oh.
I don't know why he's pronouncing it Lazarus.
Like Houdini?
Yeah. Maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But that one fairly tame. It's funny, if you watch the entire channeling session with him, he seems very friendly. He says they never had a body before. They do speak in like a Scottish accent. I keep hearing like James Bond every time I watch him. Sean Connery.
Yeah, like a Welsh accent almost.
It's Welsh.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's not Scottish. It's Welsh.
It sounds very Welsh. Yeah.
So that one's fairly tame, but
he can just turn it on like that.
He said
like he's not even just boop.
Yeah, it takes about 30 seconds. I cut out the dead air between it while he was doing it.
Okay.
But you heard both of the voices.
Yeah.
They're very different from each other. This guy just seems like a normal dude. And then all of a sudden this Welsh guy starts coming out of him who's got all kinds of stuff to tell you about how you should treat others and things like that. It's a positive message.
Yeah.
Let's see who's next.
This is Gail Stouffer. By the way, heir to the Stouffer fortune.
Whoa!
Not true. I made that up.
Oh.
And I do not recall anything that's happening in channeling anymore.
My name is Midna, and we thank you for inviting us to this occasion, my dear sweet child. To be basic, we are from the dimension of the universe, universal mind, or from which some call God.
No.
Why? Why? Oh, that's a rough one. That is rough.
That one's bad. It feels bad.
Yeah.
It just does not feel right. But we have to, here's the thing. There were people doing voices of other people's cultures on The Simpsons like 10 years ago.
I understand. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've come a long way since then. People are a little more sensitive. But
do you know what's so funny though? You can tell they're like so excited to do it because they all they launch in so quick with so much enthusiasm that you're like, oh, like it's so funny.
Can we watch that one again? Can you go back and watch that from the top again? Because I want you to compare this woman's normal voice.
And I do not recall anything that's happening in channeling.
My name is Midna.
To be fair, a lot of these people think that they are actually channeling something. So the idea that they've changed their voice shouldn't be surprising to you. It's so that they put the character on.
Yeah.
And I'm giving them I'm saying
You're trying
that
to be gracious about it.
I'm saying that as if like let's for a second believe that these people really do believe they're channeling something.
Yeah.
It's kind of not really surprising to me that the channeled persona would have a different accent or a different cadence.
I guess that's fair.
Or whatever. It's just incredibly racially insensitive.
Sure. I mean, here's the thing. Is racially insensitive if it's fake?
Yes.
Otherwise, maybe it's not.
I mean, but
I'm just saying. It's just a thought experiment.
All right, fair.
I'm just saying. Okay, well, we can table this discussion.
Reserve judgment for the last two.
Yeah.
You know what? Talk about it in the comments.
Yeah, we'll see.
This one, though, I promise you will never see this accent coming.
I have to say, when we were watching this, we watched this video with museum members. We do movie nights, and we watched this with museum members, and we got hit with that accent, and we were like, oh boy. And then this next channeler, the name of the persona they were channeling, immediately Greg and I were like, oh no. We thought like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
And you just can't in any way, shape, or form anticipate this accent.
This is Jamie Sams, and Jamie Sams would channel a couple entities,
Yes.
but most notably one that called itself the Tibetan.
Just the Tibetan.
But I promise, you're not going to hear
You
this.
will never-
You'll never guess what the Tibetan sounds
You
like.
can't even imagine.
Well, trans-channeling actually started happening around 3 years ago. I was sitting in the backyard, everyone else was inside, and I was looking at the sky, and all these clouds started going across, and then one wasn't moving. And I knew for sure that there was something behind the cloud. And so I just screamed mentally, "Why are you hiding from me?" All of a sudden, telepathically, I could hear the voice.
I am the Tibetan, and I have come during this time continuum to discuss with you the idea of the only question in the universe. And that question is, what is? And the answer is, I am.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's so good.
Deep.
It's a good one.
It was Porky Pig.
I know.
Oh no.
Channeling Mel Blanc.
You know what's funny though? Let's consider something. We're 3 for 3 with the only thing that they're really doing for the most part is just closing their eyes.
That's true.
There isn't like
There's
anything
no devices.
else. No, I mean she sort of had her hands in a specific position, but like they're just sort of sitting quietly, likely just wherever they were being interviewed, just closing their eyes and immediately being able to channel.
I'm pretty sure I've heard my friend Jason Gowan do
I think
that exact same accent
I feel
before.
like Gowan absolutely could do that accent pretty good.
Now we've got one more that we're going to play. This is my all-time favorite channeler. I was a very big fan when I was younger of a show called Weird Weekends with Louis Theroux.
Shout out Louis Theroux.
Louis
we love
Theroux's
you.
Weird Weekends, amazing. It was an old BBC show. You and I watched this together when we lived in Seattle. We found it at Scarecrow Video.
We did. Louis is the best. If you don't know who Louis Theroux is, please. I mean, how could you not at this point? You've got to know who Louis is. If you've never seen Weird Weekends, please go and peruse Weird Weekends. It's wonderful.
This is a guy who we first discovered through Weird Weekends. His name is Reverend Robert Short.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away several years ago. He was the
R.I.P. Bob Short.
Blue Rose Ministry, which involved a lot of channeling of UFO entities.
Yes.
This was out in the desert. And he was known for channeling an entity called Korton from Koldos, planet Koldos. And
Korton rules.
Korton rules.
Korton or bust.
We don't have the clips from Weird Weekends in here because it would obviously get flagged. This is one of his private channeling sessions. Korton from Koldos had to go through several switchboard entities in order to come through. But once you've seen Robert Short channel Korton, you'll never look at any other channeler the same way.
Okay.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Our God is one. Amen. This is the voice of Instruct Relay Automatic in and for the planet you of the Earth, God Jupiter. On behalf of the Honorable Korton, we are ready to begin with the information which we have for these individuals in this time period. Shalom. Adonai Vasubaragus. I am Korton. This is the voice of Instruct Relay Automatic and for the planet you of the Earth, God Jupiter. On behalf of the Honorable Korton representative, we are ending our communication.
Oh.
There he is.
Yeah.
That was Korton.
There was an operator in the middle.
There's an operator in the middle. I
That's
love
so
it.
cool.
I cut that way down. You can watch that full. We'll link these clips so you can watch the full channeling sessions of these in the show notes. But that one's like 11 minutes long. I love Korton. There's weird vocal tics that happen with Korton where after every few words it is like, we are here to tell you
He also rolls his R's a lot. He'll do
He does.
He does a little Jeff Goldblum in there.
He does throw a little Jeff Goldblum stank on it.
Yeah.
Sweet shirt, by the way.
Yeah, Dan Flash's for sure. I bet that shirt was expensive.
Killer ponytail.
Sweet ponytail.
And like an eye mask.
Yeah, I like the eye mask too. Yeah, you're right. But that's part of the thing. Maybe it helps better than just closing your eyes.
R.I.P. Korton.
Yep.
We loved Korton.
We love Korton.
I would love it if somebody else out there started channeling Korton because we still need to get some transmissions from Mission Control.
Yes.
Connor, if you had an entity that you channeled, what would it sound like?
Very different from my own voice.
It has to be different.
Which would be, I think, a little bit obviously higher pitched.
Oh.
And maybe would speak more directly and wouldn't use as many long, drawn out words and say things like the way that I do. And okay. Give me the trumpet.
You want the trumpet?
Yeah.
Which one do you want? We got 3. You want the big one or you want the... Let's take this one.
Yeah.
Get further back. There you go. Oh my God, I can hear it already. You sound like Darth Vader.
If we close our eyes, it'll sound like we're at a seance. That's actually unbelievably scary.
Here's the thing. Think for a second. It's dark. Some lady's telling you you're going to channel your dead loved ones, and that freaking sound comes out of it.
Yeah, dude.
I hate it. It's so scary.
It's scary.
Okay. You try.
Let me use a different one. I'll use the old one with the luminous bands. What you guys don't know about me is that I've had an entity that's lived inside me for years.
We know.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, we definitely know.
My name's William Bonham. I'm a little boy. I'm here to tell you that the world is ending. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm real sorry, but you gotta deal with it. All right, that's all I gotta tell you. Over and out. Bye-bye.
I hate Bilbo.
What do you mean you hate Bilbo?
Over and out. Bye-bye.
Bilbo loves Dana, by the way.
That's a real good transition.
That's great.
Instead of transmission received.
One time
Over and out. Bye-bye.
One time Greg did Bilbo for so long I cried.
It's true. It's true. The problem is, once I let him out, I had a really hard time putting him back in.
I know.
Anyway, that's William Bonham Jr.
Or AKA Bilbo.
AKA Bilbo.
It's the worm that lives inside your...
Yes.
That's the worm. No relation to Frodo.
No.
At all.
It's because it's Bilbo.
I need to make it legally distinct because we are on Frodo's podcast network.
We are. That is true.
Does Dana have one?
Dana, do you have a voice? What's your channeled
Can
voice
I do
sound
one?
like?
I'm going to do one. Okay, ready?
You buy tickets to this false haunted objects live tour at www.newkirktour.com. Some of the random
Hey.
It came back.
Did it talk about Bitcoin?
Why does that keep happening?
No, we think we missed the boat on the Bitcoin.
Why are you so worried about
He was just hawking tickets to the fall tour.
Oh, okay. I thought he was going to give us more financial advice.
I mean, kind of. I guess it is. We will make some money if you come to the tour this fall.
Okay, that's good.
Come to the tour this fall,
Come
or
and see us.
Suffer the wrath of the entity.
Why does that keep happening?
This is what happens when you go through the electric fog.
Yeah.
You pick up a fifth dimensional hitchhiker. Do you wish you could have weekly episodes of the Haunted Objects podcast? If so, you're in luck because we just launched Museum Mailbag, a companion show where we dive deep into previous episodes' topics, answer your questions about the unexplained, and reveal the secrets of the universe.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. The only way to get the show is to become a member of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. Becoming a member doesn't just support the show, it also gives you access to monthly live-streamed adventures and experiments with us.
And a magical monthly subscription box with live classes about the occult and witchcraft with me.
Plus, you'll get downloadable goodies, exclusive merch, and more.
To join the museum and get your weekly dose of the Haunted Objects podcast and so much more, join us at patreon.com/paramuseum.
All right, so we've had a lot of fun at the top of the show, talking about fraudulent mediumship. We've played some people who were channeling some strange entities and strange voices, and a lot of it's focused, obviously, on the Spirit Trumpet. And we've talked about how they were used typically for fraudulent mediumship. It was people who were trying to take people's money to pretend that they were talking to their dead loved ones. It's nothing that we ever approve of or agree with. The thing is, though, as we continuously find making this show, when you start to actually read the original material and you go back and see where a lot of these ideas developed, there's some actually spooky, weird things going on. And the Spirit Trumpet development is no exception to that. It happened really 3 or 4 years after the Fox sisters were claiming to talk to Mr. Splitfoot in their cabin in New York. Right here in the middle of nowhere in Ohio, there was a family who actually developed these tools in order to help with their channeling, and the things that they were channeling and the messages that those things had to say are downright spooky. We're talking about the Coons family from Athens, Ohio. Before we get into this information, we need to give a big shout out to Sharon Hatfield, who is on staff at Ohio University. Mm-hmm. Sharon wrote really the first big exploration of who the Coons family were in a book called Enchanted Ground, The Spirit Room of Jonathan Coons. Most of the information that we're going to tell you here either comes from her book or directly from a book that Jonathan Coons wrote himself. That's where this material comes from. I don't know why more people haven't talked about this story. I don't know if the implications of it are too strange or if it doesn't particularly fit with most of the spiritualist ideas, but this is a relatively unknown story that resulted in the birth of arguably one of the most iconic spiritualist tools outside of the Ouija board. All right, to set the stage here, we need to go back to 1852. 1852, Jonathan Coons and his family. He had 9 kids with his wife.
Yep.
Can you imagine 9 kids?
Hell no.
I can't imagine 1.
9 cats.
Yeah, 9 cats. That I can imagine.
Yeah.
He was a farmer and a teacher who moved to rural Ohio after living in Pennsylvania. Not too long after moving there, he read about the Fox sisters and was convinced to join spiritualism. He started to believe in spiritualism. I think he attended a few almost like tent revival spiritualist movement things in like Indiana, right?
Yeah, he said that he went to a seance, kind of side of the road in Indiana kind of thing.
So
cool. Attended it, and he actually was wondering about some of his own mediumistic abilities, it seemed. And he was thinking questions, and the rapping, he thought, was responding to the questions that he had inside of his mind.
Interesting.
Which led him to believe that maybe he was also in contact with whatever was going on.
And there's a quote here. He says, "As I chose to present my own questions, many of which were asked mentally, which were all correctly answered, amongst the various questions given by me, I inquired for mediums in my own family, naming them over in order, and behold, the lot fell upon myself." So at one of these mediumship demonstrations, he has mental questions answered by the medium, and then finds out that he himself has mediumship abilities. Not long after this, he finds out that other family members, his wife and his 14-year-old son, Nahum, are also gifted mediums, and they are instructed to start performing mediumship on their farmland. They actually have to build a house, a little shack outside. It was like 6 feet from their house. They built this shack. It could only hold about 20 people. And this was where the majority of these very weird things began to be channeled by the Coons family.
I think it's interesting because, like you said, this is not too long after the Fox sisters. So you're kind of getting like a little snapshot moment of how the Fox sisters' influence was starting to spread across the country. And people were starting to go, oh, I can do this too. And this is something that I feel called to do. So I think it's really interesting that you get this sort of unknown story, but you get a look into how it's starting to make its way across the country, where it is. It's all it's in Ohio now. We can see that just a few years later, people in Ohio are doing this on their own land.
We have a diagram of what that room looked like. We'll put it on screen. It's not big.
No, but it's very specific.
It's very specific, isn't it? Yeah.
The way that this worked was it originally started through automatic writing. We have a quote here. According to the Spiritual Telegraph newspaper, Coons' hand was seized by some strange influence, and he began writing at terrific speed, filling 3 or 4 sheets of paper in a few minutes. The scribbles appeared to be in some kind of language, but he couldn't read it. The automatic writing continued to produce this alien script for 2 weeks until Coons grew weary and concluded that the source was not spirits, but some unconscious mental action of his own. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
That's not the first place most people go to. Like, even when you're talking about the Ouija board, which we do believe is being controlled by the ideomotor effect, that doesn't make it fake. It just means that, like, there's something in your subconscious mind. Maybe it's contacting something outside of you. Maybe it's just inside of you.
What a useful tool for introspection.
Absolutely.
How amazing.
But people have a hard time even believing that.
Sure.
So it's interesting that this guy, who was an educated man, he was a teacher. So this guy, he knew how to think. And this guy was like, well, this has to be something unconscious going on here.
We have a picture of some of his scribbles, too, for those who are watching.
Which, by the way, we should say looks very much like a lot of alien writing that you'll see in a lot of contactee cases.
It
or
really
even
does.
Angelic writing that you see in like old ritual magic, like Enochian writing, things like that. Keep that in mind, because this starts to get stranger. Abigail, however, was not persuaded. His wife had observed its influence on him and did not believe the intelligence and force originated in him or in any person present. The Telegraph said, and while they were discussing the matter, his hand was moved to write a communication to them in English, the character of which entirely disproved his theory. Soon, not only he, but others in the Coons household were writing out messages. So it spread
weird.
around the family. In what surely must have been one of the strangest homeschools in the country, Jonathan taught the children to develop their own psychic specialities, which he called these strange spiritual gifts.
They're like the Partridge Family of psychics.
Just wait, because it gets to that point.
I know.
They had one for rapping, so there was one gift for rapping, one for table tipping, another for writing, another for speaking, another for seeing, and so on and so forth.
There's a lot of kids to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of the kids were trying to develop different mediumship abilities. Pretty fascinating. Basically tuning up different instruments, so to speak. They used everything from automatic writing. They used rappings in response to questions. They would spell out words in response to the tapping, which was the same thing that started the development of the Ouija board.
Yes.
This is before any of that was occurring. And so what they would basically do is, while they were trying to speak to these spirits, whoever or whatever they were, they would go A, B, C, D, and then the spirit would knock. And then they'd go, okay, and they'd write down a D. You can see why we developed the Ouija board, the spirit board.
Yes, it's much more efficient.
One of their children, though, seemed to show a little more aptitude for mediumship, and that was their 14-year-old son, their oldest son, Nahum. Nahum was a really great vocal medium, and he started to use an old trumpet in order to amplify the voices that were coming out of him. This trumpet wasn't a trumpet like you would normally think about. It was kind of like a horn that you would use for like a cheerleading. It was the same kind of deal. In fact, a lot of historians have tried to figure out where this thing might have come from, because it was obviously not like a normal like trumpet that went toot, toot, toot.
Yeah.
It was probably something that they were used to like call people home for dinner in the field.
Sure. And if they lived on a farm, they probably had a bunch of kids out in the field all day doing stuff. And so that was probably what they used to call them back to the house.
It was probably a megaphone.
Yeah.
The very early version of that type of thing.
So he would just straight up talk into it.
He would talk into it, and that would amplify the voices that were coming out of him. And what you have seen right there is literally the very first use of a spirit trumpet. That is where this all comes from. It's very strange to me that more people haven't talked about this, particularly because of how weird the stuff that they were channeling was. Maybe that's part of the reason people don't talk about this very much. There's weird implications here. The way that this would typically work is they would place this trumpet, this metal trumpet, down on the medium table before the seance began. And then before using it, it would be raised into the air. A sentence would be distinctly articulated through it, and then it would fall to the table. And that meant that it was ready to use.
Weird.
This trumpet allegedly could float on its own. That was something that numerous people witnessed. The reason that the family started leaning on this so much was, as you can imagine, it's much easier to have someone who can just channel a voice than have to wait for all of the rapping. Because again, this was before Ouija boards.
Yeah.
So you would have to go through the entire alphabet. So imagine like
hours.
Your kid starts to just say the things.
Yeah. And even from the perspective of, let's just say the spirit, right? If we are to believe that, you know, the lore today, the amount of like energy or focus that would be required to continuously be knocking for hours on end would be pretty crazy. So it makes sense that they were like, how do we make this more efficient? What's the best way to do this? Totally makes sense.
This sort of started small and in private. What would happen is sometimes they would even walk into a room and there would be pre-written instructions about things. One of the things that was channeled through Nahum were charts of the celestial spheres, which I think is really fascinating. And there's a beautiful diagram that allegedly Nahum created himself through channeled information about the celestial spheres. Nahum actually channeled 3 different requests from King. They were, number one, a specific group of musical instruments needed to be acquired. This was the middle of nowhere, Ohio, you have to remember. It took like a day's ride to get to their house. They were in the middle of nowhere. It was a really difficult thing for these guys to get these very specific instruments that they required. In fact, they even wrote about what a terrible time they had trying to get all of these things. That was the first thing. The other thing was the building that they were to use for their seances themselves, the Spirit Room. This was a room that only held about 20 people in total. It was very small. It sat about 6 feet from their house, and they had to build it to the specific specifications. The third thing that they were required to do was build a device Now, there's not a whole lot of details about what this device is. There are some schematics that you can look at.
There's a diagram of it. Yeah.
But it was called a spirit table or an electric table.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of information about it.
There's something so creepy also, like while you're talking about all of this, imagining that this is happening in like an isolated like home up a mountain, like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So this family's very isolated. They're kind of like, they're going through this experience together, but like just imagining the environment that it's happening in is also adding to like the creep factor, because they must have felt, it must have been like very kind of a frightening experience even for them to go through.
They called it it was like a spirit battery. It was a spirit. There would be nobody, all we have now today is some of Jonathan Kuhn's writings, some of Nahum's, but a lot of witnesses saying what they heard. And there's like sparks coming from the table. There was something going on in the middle of the room after whatever they ended up building was built. I want to find those schematics and try and build that table.
No joke.
Yeah.
This is the description. This is really one of the only descriptions of this table outside of this strange schematic that's very hard to make sense of. We can put it on screen. You can see it for yourself. The final product was a contraption made of metal and wood whose purpose was collecting and focalizing the magnetic aura used in the manifestations, sometimes described as a novel battery, a retainer of electricity, or a spirit machine. The spirits wrote on the table with chalk, time was beat to music, spirit bands were organized, etc. Very, very strange that they would say that sparks would come off of the table at certain times. It almost makes me wonder if it was supposed to like gather static electricity.
Yeah, well, think about what you just described also. Like they're playing drums, they're playing instruments, they're literally raising energy.
Sure.
They were told to build a small room that could contain energy. They built a ritual space.
They did, absolutely.
And the table's job was to pull energy out of the space that we're building the energy in so that the spirit could manifest.
It's starting to sound to me less like a seance room and more like a ritual magic room.
That's what I'm thinking.
When you start to look at early Solomonic magic and things like that, you look at like John Dee and the communications that he received from the angels. They were in strange writings called Enochian. They were told to build specific tables that would allow them to scry different aethers. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is very interesting. All of these details immediately, they take my mind away from kind of spiritualism or even seance stuff, and I'm already thinking of like ritual magic.
They started performing seances so often. People were coming from all over the place to attend these seances in this tiny little room. And the way that it would work was everybody would sit down. Again, only about 20 people. Jonathan Kuhn's would sit in the middle, his wife on one side, his son Nahum on the other, and then he would start to play the fiddle. The lights would go down, and then all of a sudden, all of these other instruments would start to play on their own, as if there was a ghostly band inside of this spirit room.
Would have been loud.
During the demonstrations, the MC wasn't John Kuhn's, but a voice that came through a steel horn, a voice that called itself King, someone that said they were the master of all the spirits present. There were 165 spirits. Anyone who's done any studying of Solomonic magic.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that.
It sounds like the same kind of things that you would read in some of those books. One spirit that's in charge of numerous other spirits. This doesn't sound like a typical ghost. It's not a dead person that they're talking to. On August 15th, 1852, after 6 months of recording the bizarre messages, Kuhn's began to feed his manuscripts into the flames of a stove or an open hearth in his house. The dwelling began to shake, and the furniture was thrown about. Strange noises resembling logs rolling across the roof or trees falling on the cabin scared him, and as the shaking continued, he feared the house would fall down around him. Kuhn stopped his headstrong act to ask the spirits what they wanted. He was told to hold on a little longer, and all would be well. Kuhn's demanded to know whom these reassurances were coming from. Through calling out the alphabet and listening for raps at the appropriate letter, the Kuhn's mediums were able to spell out the identity of the forceful intruder as, quote, King and Master of Paints, servant and scholar of God. Master of Paints. When you look at Solomonic magic, there are different entities that are in charge of different arts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this doesn't sound like a dead person. Once the Coons had accepted his guidance, the spirit calling himself king dominated the seances. He provided his history to the family as promised on August 17th, 1852, when he claimed to be the head of a band of 165 spirits. King daringly declared himself, as well as the earth, to be, quote, of more ancient date than Adam. He claimed to have lived 14,000 years earlier, and that he belonged to a people whose organization would in those days be called giants, and in consequence of his superior physical endowment, they were a nation of kings. Hence, his cognomen is King, a Buffalo newspaper explained. A great congress of entities from the various spirit spheres had recently adopted a plan to communicate with humans through raps, and King, because of his evolved spiritual nature, was among those deputized to proceed. The cosmic outreach was proving wildly successful. Though King sometimes did communicate by rapping, the entity was also said to provide written messages, which he signed King, Servant, and Scholar of God. At other times, King would step aside and give voice to an angel named Ores, or to culturally exotic spirits, such as Native Americans or the Chinese. Ores. We looked this up. We can't seem to find any reference to that anywhere else except for the Coons accounts.
O-R-E-S-S.
O-R-E-S-S.
Right.
One of the things that I think is worth pointing out here that also sets this aside from much of the mediumship displays that were happening all over the country at that point, they never accepted a dime of payment to do this.
And they were doing it like every single night.
They were doing it constantly.
And the messages were coming constantly as well. So they said that there were like 3 main ways that these messages were being portrayed to them. Number 1, the writing would appear in the spirit room on parchment and paper when the room was locked and nobody was in it. And they would just walk into the room and their message would be written down. Number 2, it would happen during a seance. Hands would appear and start to write on a piece of paper in the dark during the seance. Or number 3, Nahum would channel something as a conduit through the trumpet, and the voices would, they said, have to be remembered, because whoever was there would just have to remember what he was saying because it was too dark to write anything down.
Yes.
And then you would remember what he said and write it down afterwards. And the messages were not typical of what you would expect necessarily.
No. In fact, there was a book that came out, and it was written by Jonathan Coons.
Yeah.
The title of it has quite the title on it.
Great. The title says it all, really.
It's called A Book for Skeptics, Being Communions from Angels, written with their own hands, also oral communications, spoken by angels through a trumpet, and written down as they were delivered in the presence of many witnesses. Also, a representation and explanation of the celestial spheres as given by the spirits at J. Coon's Spirit Room in Dover, Athens County, Ohio.
Yeah, so this is
That's the entire title.
This isn't just a medium like talking to your meemaw for you. This is like very complex, very, very strange things.
The things that are inside of this book are not typical spirit seance topics. In fact, a lot of it is King or Ores giving messages where they kind of give an alternate version of the biblical Genesis.
Yeah.
Which to me was fascinating to realize, because I stayed up all night reading this original book.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
They actually talk about something which at the time would have seemed very heretical to people in this country who were mostly Christians. They were talking about the birth of God. That's a no-no. Like at least, I grew up Baptist, and the thing that you always knew is that God always existed. God was always there. And one day he just said, let there be light. And that was that. No, this says that God was birthed into the womb of the void.
Yeah. Very Gnostic.
Very Gnostic. This is stuff that you would not normally see, particularly in this time period.
Yeah.
Just for context of this. Yeah. This was like before the light bulb was invented.
Yes.
Sitting in the dark in this tiny cabin schoolhouse, and they're either hearing this message come through a trumpet. It's unclear as to whether people knew that it was Nahum holding the trumpet or not. It seems like Jonathan just straight up admits that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
So it's either a 14-year-old boy saying this stuff, or it's appearing in ghost handwriting.
Yes. Sometimes in locked boxes too. Weren't they put in like locked rooms by themselves?
Yeah, the room would be locked until it was time for the seance.
Yeah, and then they would walk in and there would be writing. Sometimes an alien handwriting, alien script that people couldn't decipher.
Or sometimes sections of text like this.
Yes.
That's in the book.
I just want to point out this, which just occurred to me as we're doing this now. When you think of heavenly angels giving announcements, how do they give the announcements?
Yeah, through a trumpet.
Through a trumpet. You know, the other thing that I was just thinking about too is the idea that like, people would go to the wilds to commune with hedge people or shaman, people that lived in the outskirts. The idea was that you would have to travel to them. You would have to go to a place that was far away. There was a sense of danger involved. There was, like literally you were going to the hedge, you were going to the wilds, and you would have to kind of engage with it on its own in its own space. So there's even an element of like regular people having to make these massively long treks out to the middle of nowhere to watch and witness this very strange thing that does really feel much more bizarre than like a couple of mediums with floating, you know what I mean? There's really like a big investment on the part of everyone involved in this. And it's very strange.
Their neighbor's structure was 2 miles away. So it wasn't even really stagecoach. Like you would have to walk.
You'd have to walk.
You have to walk
2 miles.
2 miles through the woods
hills
to get there.
Yeah.
To Mount Nebo is what it's called now out there. But not only that was just 2 miles from the nearest neighbor. It was also a half a day's carriage ride to the nearest town.
Yeah. So
That's
we're talking like
investment.
Yeah, you're really going out of your way, and like if it archetypally, this story takes on some of those archetypes of the idea of going out and communicating with the hedge person, with the way show or the go-between person. You have to really go and engage in a scary way.
Listen to some of the other things that were in this book. The first chapter, they're all affidavits from participants of the seances. Everything they experienced was true. But they also said here, the spirits teach that they manifest two primitive principles, electromagnetic and physical, from which arise a composite. Under the electromagnetic are found those various spiritual phenomena which do not come within the precincts of physical agency, and by means of which the spirits are enabled to overcome the laws of cohesion upon organic matter, such as ascending from the earth's surface and carrying with them some material substance and letting it fall back. I just want to point out that right now, we've done this our entire lives. We've been part of what we would refer to as the ghost hunting world, right? After Hellier happened, our minds changed quite a bit. I would say that you and I are like full-blown occultists at this point because it's hard to keep searching and not be led to that point.
Sure.
That said, there's a lot of work that we have been influenced by at this point that sort of lends some credibility to ideas about what ghosts might be or how we might see ghosts, how they manifest, that type of thing. I believe in ghosts. I don't think they're dead people. I also think that, our minds serve a very specific purpose within that function, within how they manifest. This sounds a lot like conclusions that we have come to by looking at people like Dr. Michael Persinger, who invented what everyone calls the God helmet, that the idea that fluctuations in the electromagnetic field affect our electric minds, make them function in a different way, and we begin to see and experience things that are not typical, which is why certain places, one of Dr. Michael Persinger's work talks about how places where people have seen miracles or UFOs or weird things like that, they have like strange electromagnetic, geomagnetic weirdness there. And those things actually do affect the mind. They will make you feel sensed presences. We've experimented a lot with the God helmet. This feels like a very early way of saying, spirits manipulate electromagnetic waves and it can make your mind operate differently. That is bizarre to me. to see that in a book this old.
Yeah.
It was the very beginning of ghosts in that common way.
In the spiritualist way, yes.
Yeah.
What do we make of that?
I mean, everything about this story is so strange, especially if you look at it from the perspective of an occultist, or if you look at it from the perspective of someone with some understanding of occult ritual and sort of ceremonial magic in general. When you look at it, you've got all of the perfect scenarios. Like they're going out of their way to build an individual space where energy can be raised. They're using specific methods almost.
Yeah.
And then they're coming to some conclusions that are relatively modern in the way that we think about the paranormal today.
Right.
They're
using language of the time period.
Using the language of the time
to say it.
Yeah. It's so interesting because it's like you're looking at a group of people who started to do something and then it changed the way they thought about it, and suddenly they're thinking about it in a different way, a more complex way, a more nuanced way. Again, using the language of their time period and the way that they could think about it at their time period, but still pretty advanced almost, and in a really interesting, abstract way.
But then on the other hand, I look at this and I go, well, these are all traditional, like fraudulent medium tricks.
Yes.
You know, the lights are off.
Uh-huh.
A tin trumpet is floating around the room.
Yeah, they have a bunch of kids. It makes sense.
They're kind of doing spirit. Yeah, exactly. You never hear anything else about those other 8 kids.
Yes, because they were moving all the equipment all over the place.
It's hard not to believe that is not actually happening.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like,
and it would be unwise to not believe it.
Absolutely, I think we should be skeptical about that.
Yes,
but the weirder part to me is the fact that they were saying such strange things that we never really hear again outside of weird investigations being done by modern day brain scientists.
You know what some of the difference is too? They were not trying to talk to dead people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it's like
they were already like, we're
guys,
over it.
No,
yeah.
I mean, it being basically the very beginning. They're not. That was not the attempt. There were 20 people a night who would show up and sit down in those pews, and the Spirit Trumpet was not walking around. It was not. There was no level of advantageous. I'm going to pull one over on you in that sense.
Right.
It wasn't like, I'm going to talk to Aunt Gertrude.
Yes.
And whom knows about your family history. That was not what was going on. Instead, people were watching a nightly seance to the other in a generalized sense. And it completely changes the mindset of what the seance is even for.
They're even going against the like tropes of that time period, which is like, you know, you said it yourself, Connor. They would literally, like, the mediums would be in one place for a week and then they'd move on to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so you're getting a group of people who are literally like staying in one place, communicating in one type of way. People had to come to them, and it wasn't really the other way around. They weren't traveling around trying to like. They were like actively sort of engaged in a larger goal as a family, and that's very weird and very interesting.
And the end product was that book.
Yeah.
I mean, they stopped because they were just overwhelmed. There were too many people. They didn't accept money. They maybe donations, but they weren't charging anything.
Right.
And, you know, the family had to host all these strangers over and over again. People would stay like multiple nights sometimes because it was such a trek. And so they just didn't have the means to keep it up. They got exhausted, and some townsfolk, distant but nearby, were accusing them of fraud. There were claims that maybe people were like coming to burn their crops and things like that to go after them.
Did one of their barns burn down?
Supposedly, suspiciously.
Yeah.
If that's part of it too.
If there were so many people interested in this and they were really interested in making money, you would build a bigger cabin than one that fits 20 people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But they never went against their own rules. Those were the rules that were dictated to them.
Interesting to me.
It is very interesting, especially when you consider that like the goal quite often was just to kind of exploit it, to make money off of it. They had the opportunity many, many times, and they just never took it. They never went against what King told them to do.
It's about 3 years, and then they just stopped.
And we never hear about them again.
No. Nahum was supposedly a spiritualist throughout his life.
Yeah.
Continued that, but that was all you really hear about them.
That's so strange.
It's a very, very strange story.
Normally, when you think about fraudulent mediumship, you think about people in these stadiums who are there to give you feel-good messages that don't challenge you at all. They are there to make you feel nice about it, to say, Grandma wants you to know how much she loves you. That'll be $50. Mm-hmm. That's normally the way that this works. The stuff that was coming out of Nahum, the things that King was saying, were very challenging at the time to a lot of the beliefs that people had.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to read, there's a paragraph here that is from this book that actually spoke to me.
This is the Coons channeled text.
This is the Coons channeled text here. It says, the following communication was orally delivered by an ancient spirit through a trumpet in a circle in Dover, Athens, Ohio, and minuted down by J. Coons in presence of the audience. Suffer not your minds to be enslaved by another man's opinion. Examine your object before you undertake to make a statement of its character. Compare your shades in true balances. Eat the fruit that matures on the tree of your own judgment. Eat not the fruit offered you from a tree of another man's cultivation until you make an analytical investigation of its qualities, lest you eat the seeds of death which will render you liable to its influence through many generations. Judge the tree by its fruit, and its fruit by its qualities, and its qualities by its effects, and its effects by its resulting consequences. An evil tree brings fruit that deranges health. You cannot expect healthy fruit from a corrupt tree, neither can you expect a sound judgment from a deranged mind. A mind that is biased uses no balances and is consequently ill qualified to judge either quantity or quality. Neither can he walk erect because his burden is all upon one side. Minds in error need no accusers. Yes, friends of earth, cultivate your minds. If you submit your soil to another man's care, your husbandman will sow the seed of his own interest, suffering your ground to become uncumbered with weeds, profiting you nothing.
Friends of Earth is also a very weird way to
That sounds very alien to me.
Yeah.
That's genuinely good advice.
Yeah, think for yourself.
Think for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let other people tell you what to think about something, because you're going to reap their fruit that they planted in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the best advice we could give anyone about their explorations of the strange and the unexplained, especially when you're dealing with murky waters of mediumship and spiritualism.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of thing that somebody would say if they want someone, if they're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It strikes me as very, very weird.
It's also not the kind of thing you'd hear your typical 14-year-old say.
Exactly.
Well, that's true too.
Maybe in 1852, but not now.
Yeah.
That's very weird. There was something. So this being said, I think that I don't know if you guys agree. I think that what was happening was fraudulent. I think that they, like you said, had their kids dancing around the room.
Yeah.
And there's stories in that book too of people standing up and getting thwacked on the head by a tambourine. Because they had some sort of apparatus in there to enable that to happen. But what it is it was some semblance of fakery being covered as a sheen sort of allows the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Which is a nuanced way to think about it, but it allows the audience to suspend disbelief, creating the environment where things like this can come through, is what I'm starting to think.
I mean, it's like what you asked earlier, why is the spirit trump? Why does there need to be a thing between the person and the other person who's getting that information?
Yes.
But you just nailed it. It's that it's more comforting to people to have the thing in the middle so that you feel a little bit more comfortable taking that advice, because it feels as if it's not coming directly from another human being, because that person could fake it.
Yes.
So if there's something in the middle, you can suspend your belief a little bit and you can allow yourself to kind of engage
becomes inspired by an outside force.
Yes.
I think about the way that all religions come into play. It's a story. There's a story that is being enacted.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's greatly exaggerated, if not outright false to begin with. It's some kind of a folkloric thing that happens that suddenly people start to realize there is an initiating quality from, and then they begin to think differently because of it. It's almost, you kind of nailed it when you said, it's interesting that people need something between them. They need the spirit trumpet to be between the messenger and them.
Yeah.
And they need to be in a magical space.
And they need to be in a magical space. So maybe it's it can be fraudulent in order to give it that dramatic feeling that it needs in order for you to actually have the seed of some knowledge planted in your head.
Yeah, much like a ritual.
Exactly.
That there's most ritual magicians will tell you that the drama of the ritual is helpful for the magician. Yes. It's helpful for the experience of the magician. That circle and the actions that are taking place within that space, the drama is part of it. And most of the time that drama is part of it for you. It's to help you.
Yes. We've started to really believe, our opinions on the paranormal have changed so dramatically, even in just the last 10 years, to the point where I'm starting to see patterns emerge in all kinds of paranormal activity, fraudulent or not, exaggerated or not, where it seems like the ultimate, whatever it is, whether it's the collective unconscious, whether it is our consciousness existing somewhere outside of ourselves, it's creativity that allows, the creativity is sort of the substrate that allows new ideas to grow. And sometimes it's through things like art. It's through dreams that people experience this type of thing. Or maybe sometimes it is literally through fraudulent mediumship that people are allowed to think a new thought in a way that doesn't feel too far away from the truth.
Yeah, and then there you have your trickster. You have that trickster. You have the trickster. And how the trickster helps in the long run. It's trickster. It's still tricking someone, but there's a strangeness that happens as consequence of that experience.
Which frankly makes the more sort of nasty fraudulent mediumship, the ones where people are just being told that their grandma will talk to them for $50, as opposed to a bunch of people in a cabin who are like putting on a dramatic show in order to make you think new ways about science and religion and things like that. Think for yourself, as opposed to just take at face value what somebody's telling you. It makes it so much worse when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to me to see where this thing came from and how far away it got from what it was originally used for, which was for a little boy to tell you weird prophecies from angels. And all that said is why spirit trumpets are a haunted object.
The Haunted Objects podcast is hosted by Greg and Dana Newkirk, produced by Connor J. Randall, with cinematography and editing by Carl Pfeiffer, and features exclusive artifacts from the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. To learn more about the artifacts featured in this episode, take part in live interactive experiments, and enjoy exclusive Haunted Objects content, become a museum member at patreon.com/paramuseum. This has been a Planet Weird production for Spectre Vision Radio.
The only way to get the entity out of Dana is to buy tickets to the fall tour at www.newkirktour.com.
What you don't know is it's actually an exorcism that you're taking part in.
That would be great, live on stage.
Yeah.
Exorcising the entity. Live on stage.
You gotta get that worm out.
Gotta get that worm out.
There's like two chairs, and then there's like another chair that Dana's like strapped into. We're like, this doesn't look. This looks unusual. Wait a second.
This is really weird.
Be the same thing.
So strange.
Wow.
All the lights go off, and then I just walk around naked with like a tube, and I like throw pebbles at people.
That's what kind of tour we're talking about. These exit signs really threw off the seance movement.
You can actually see the people walking around. They don't do that anymore. Now it's earpieces.
That's
They
true.
use earpieces.
That's true.